Hello again, I'm Edmar, founder and CEO at Kriolish, and today's lesson is on the use of accents in the Cabo Verdean Creole. As some of you may already know, the purpose of accents in writing is to specify the part of a word or syllable that is emphasized in speech, typically by stress. In the Cabo Verdean Creole, stress is usually expressed on vowels, that is A, E, I, O, and U. So when should you use accents? It's recommended to use accents when it actually serves a purpose. As mentioned before, accents serve the purpose of calling out the syllable to be stressed. But in many cases, you will see that accents can not only change the form of a word from, say, a noun to a verb, but it can also change the very meaning of a word. More on this later. Now, when should you not use accents? In cases where it's very well known that a particular syllable is stressed or when stress happens naturally. So what are the types of accents commonly used in the Cabo Verdean Creole? The acute accent, the circumflex accent, and lastly, the tilde. Okay, let's look at some examples for each, starting with the acute accent. This accent is used on all proper oxytone words, meaning words with stress on the third to last syllable. Take as example the English word practice. If we were to translate the sentence good practice, it would be bom prátika, with the accent on the third to last syllable. But if we translate the sentence practice Kriolu into one of the variants of the Sotavento Islands like Santiago, it would be pratika Kriolu. So this is a good example of how an accent changes the form of a word in that the first is a noun, the second takes on the form of a verb. But there's another interesting point to make here. When we remove the accent from prática, did you notice a shift in stress when it became pratika? Right, the stress moved to the second to last syllable naturally. So should we use an accent here? Well, let's recall what I mentioned earlier. When stress happens naturally, there's no need for an accent because at that point it doesn't fulfill much of a purpose. The acute accent is also used on paroxytone words, meaning words with stress on the second to last syllable. The rule is to use it specifically on the vowels E and O when the sound of these vowels is open. Here's an example. The English word snake translated to Kriolu is KÓBRA. We need an accent here not only because the sound is open, but also because without the accent, the word becomes KÓBRA, which means to collect in English. And there you have an example where an accent changed not only the form, but also the very meaning of a word, thus justifying its use. All right, let's look at an example of a paroxytone word in Kriolu where an accent might not be needed. Take the English word zebra. In Kriolu, we say zebra. Because the sound on the E is open, this might indicate the need for an accent. But we argue that we don't need an accent in this case because the stress happens naturally, and with or without an accent, the meaning or form of the word remains exactly the same. Here's another one for you to think about. The English word zone in Kriolu is zona. Do we need an accent here? Up next is the use of the acute accent on oxytone words, meaning words with stress on the last syllable. For example, in some variants of the Cabo Verdean Creole, the noun mom translates to mama. But then you have the translation of the word breast, which is mama, where the stress on the first syllable happens naturally, so the accent plays a more justifiable role in the word mama. Okay, let's talk about the use of the circumflex accent in Kriolu. For the most part, this accent is used to indicate the close nature of vowels on oxytone words. You will find that the use of this accent is mostly popular in variants of the Northern Islands, otherwise known as the Barlavento Islands. So for example, the English word coffee translates to café. Now, one might ask whether we really need an accent here because with or without an accent, the meaning of this word will always be the same. The problem is that the emphasis on the last syllable does not occur naturally. In fact, in the Cabo Verdean Creole, you will find that most words are stressed on the second to last syllable. So in this case, without the accent, things could get tricky in that someone could end up reading it kaf, where the E becomes effectively silent, which is a topic for a different lesson. For now, we'll just stick with café. And lastly, the tilde accent. This accent is used to make sounds that require pushing air through your nose, otherwise known as nasalization. You will also find this accent used mostly in the Cabo Verdean variants from the Barlavento Islands. Here's an example. The English word heart translates to coração. One very important thing to make note of in the use of the tilde accent is that the rule is to only use it on diphthongs. Diphthongs are sounds formed by the use of two vowels being combined in a single syllable. So why is this important? This is important because you will notice that there are some words in Kriolu that though they require making a nasal sound, they do not use the tilde accent. Referring back to coração, in the variants of the Sotavento Islands, we say coração. So here we are using the letter N to make the nasal sound instead of the tilde. But could we spell it coração? The answer is no, because that last syllable is not a diphthong. All right, that's all for this lesson. Thank you for watching.